Is the Kansas City Chiefs dynasty coming to an end? Let's talk about it. Welcome, everybody, to the Duo Collectibles YouTube channel. Please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our great football content this season. What's up, everybody? I hope you're having a great Saturday. Welcome back to Two Burning Takes, where I believe there's two sides to every story. And today we're going to be talking about the Kansas City Chiefs. They've had a hell of a run over the last decade, but is their dynasty coming to an end? Let's talk about it. I think we might be seeing the end of the Kansas City Chiefs dynasty as we know it anyways, because this Thanksgiving, they went to Dallas and they lost their third in 4 games. They fall to 6-6, and they're third in the NFC West, and they're on the outside in looking at the playoffs right now. It's a team that's had unprecedented success. I mean, they've won 3 Super Bowls. They've been to 7 straight AFC title games. It's a run that resembles, each of the Patriots' individual runs, from 2001 to 2007, and then again from 14 to 18. Patrick Mahomes already with 3 Super Bowls by the time he turns 30 years old. He could retire tomorrow and still be a Hall of Famer. So this is no shade at the Kansas City Chiefs. I really respect them as a franchise, and I respect what they've done. But we've kind of hit a point where the Dynasty Chiefs, it's gonna be hard to keep going at this pace. Again, they're 6-6. They have a pretty tough schedule the rest of the way. They're gonna have to face the Texans, who are red hot next week. You got the Chargers, who have their own injuries but are still a tough team. Still got to play the Broncos. They pretty much at this point would have to either win out or maybe lose one more game to get in the playoffs right now, and it's not looking great. And there's a few reasons for that. I still think Mahomes is an elite quarterback. I know his numbers aren't where they were early in his career, but he makes a lot of money now, and he doesn't have prime Tyreek Hill anymore. Obviously, he's been gone for a few years in Miami, and Travis Kelce's getting up there, and they really haven't replenished his playmakers. I mean, they're not getting much out of running back. Kareem Hunt's having a pretty good season, but he's an older guy. Isaiah Pacheco's been hurt, and even when he hasn't been that effective. Xavier Worthy was a first-round pick a few years ago and has his moments. He definitely had some big moments in the playoffs the last few years, and he's not a bad player. But if they expected him to kind of give you the Tyreek Hill production, he's really not there. And I like Rashee Rice. I think he's a pretty good player, but we'll see if he can stay on the field with the legal trouble he had in the past. We'll see if he can kind of stay on the straight and narrow and stay on the field. But like I said, not getting a ton from the running game, and not really getting a ton from the pass catchers other than Rice and like Kelce once in a while in big moments. I think also their O-line isn't the same as what it's been. You lose Joe Thuney to the Bears, and they really haven't gotten the tackles right. I know Josh Simmons has played pretty well as a first round pick, but he's still a young guy, and he seems to be dealing with some stuff off the field as well. Jawan Taylor was a big free agent signing for them, and he's committed a lot of penalties and really hasn't lived up to that hype that they expected out of him. So I think, overall, you're seeing Mahomes kind of carry this offense as best he can. But it's just not the same as it was with Hill and Kelce in their prime and Joe Thuney and a dominant offensive line. They're still a team that if they were to get in the playoffs, nobody wants to see them come to town. But to me, this kind of I'm a diehard Patriots fan, and I was 13 when they won in 2001, so a blessed experience to say the least as an NFL fan. But right around 2008, 2009, as the leaders from those original dynasty teams were either moving on other teams or retiring or past their prime, you saw kind of 08, 09, 10. They were in contention, but they didn't seem like the same old Patriots, right? In 08, you lose Brady to the knee injury. 09, you make the playoffs, but that was a bad team. They got run over in the playoffs by the Ravens in 2009 at home. 2010, they had a better season where they went 14-2, but they lost in the first round to the Jets at home. Again, that was still a young team, not very good, but they had Brady in his prime, so they probably won a bunch of games they shouldn't have. 2011, they made it back to the Super Bowl, but that's when you had kind of Gronk and Hernandez were really hitting the scene, and the offense was fantastic, but the defense still was lacking. And then Gronk gets hurt, and they weren't the same in that Super Bowl after he got hurt in the AFC title game. And then they were kind of trying to figure some things out. 2012, 2013, a lot of injuries, a lot of young guys. But it wasn't really until 2014 where they got into their second half of the dynasty. And the way they got back to prominence after losing guys like Ty Law, Teddy Bruschi, Corey Dillon, Vince Wilfork, they hit on drafts. In 2010, they brought in Devin McCourty, Rob Gronkowski, obviously Aaron Hernandez before all of his issues, Dante Hightower, Chandler Jones, Patrick Chung, Edelman was drafted in 2009. So basically, the titles they won in 14, 16, and 18 were won on the backs of a lot of those picks, plus Brady, obviously. That is kind of the way I see it going for the Chiefs over the next few years, right? They need to get younger. They need to hit on some drafts, and they really need to get that second group of leaders, because guys like Travis Kelce, Chris Jones are later in their career. Joe Tooney is gone. Tyrann Mathieu gone. And there's probably a bunch of other guys I'm not naming that are gone as well. So, that's kind of where I see them in their progression. They're very comparable to the Patriots. I know people around here in New England do not want to say that, but they are. They've had a great run. But now it's going to be about Brett Veach and Andy Reid. Can they turn over the roster? Can they add some great young talent through the draft? Can they get younger? Can they get cheaper? And build kind of that second nucleus while you have probably, at least 5 more years of prime Mahomes, if not longer. But, being conservative, probably at least 5 more years of Mahomes in his prime. That would bring him to about 35. And after that, you can't really assume he's going to be elite. Obviously guys have been. You see Brady has done it. Stafford is still playing well. Breeze, Rodgers, guys have played well late into their 30s, and I don't see why Mahomes couldn't. But they really need to build that second core around Mahomes while they still have him. You're kind of seeing the Bills go through that with Josh Allen as well. The only difference is that the Chiefs cashed in on their Super Bowl window and the Bills didn't, unfortunately. But so to kind of wrap it up and put a bow on it, yes, I think the Chiefs dynasty as we know it is currently over. But when you have Patrick Mahomes and you have a great coach like Andy Reid, you're 1 or 2 good off seasons away from being a legitimate title contender again. So if you're a Chiefs fan and you're worried about their situation, yeah, it's not great this year. They might miss the playoffs, or even if they make it, I don't know if they have enough horses to make it back to a Super Bowl. But it was a hell of a run. Again, 3 Super Bowls, 7 straight AFC title games, and a ton of big games along the way. But I could see this year, maybe next year, a little bit of a dip. Either they're a fringe playoff team. And if they hit on draft picks over the next few years and can kind of reset their cap, I can see them being back to prominence within a couple years for sure. So keep your head up there. Keep your head up out there, Chiefs fans. I know absolutely nobody is rooting for you to get back. I know that very well as a Patriots fan. You're not going to get any love around the NFL, and you probably shouldn't. But when you win all the time, that's the cost of doing business. You still have Patrick Mahomes. I still consider that guy the boogeyman. He doesn't have as many Super Bowls as Tom Brady, and he may never get there. But he's the closest thing we've seen to him. The guy, every time you're in a big game, every time you're in a big moment, you want that guy out there for sure. And that's what Tom Brady did for 2 decades. So we'll see how it goes.